Election season is upon us, and in 2 weeks we will all actively or passively play a role in determining who leads us for the next 4 to 8 years. Essentially, in 14 days, we will seal our fates with yet another person who is making us promises and giving us hope. Promises they may try to keep but can't or won't even bother with. So for me, the more important question is, what is our role in being the change we are desperately crying out for? When I think about tomorrow's Nigeria, I think about the 0 to 35-year-olds who still have 4 to 7 active decades ahead of them, and the fact that we have left them with little to work with. Collectively, we've handed them a ticking time bomb and told them to figure out how to disable it before it explodes. Please let that sink in. Now, let's talk about how we can maybe change their future through reorientating ourselves, our thoughts, and our actions. And with me today is Oluwaseun Falaye, a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst who has undergone extensive training in international politics, capital market, investment, and corporate governance. Oluwaseun was the former principal private secretary to Governor Babatunde Fashola-San and assistant director in the Lagos State Civil Service until 2015. Welcome, Seun.
Thank you, Feran.
I'm really quite excited to have you here. I don't know if you can tell that I'm quite nervous, but super excited.
I'm glad to be here.
So for me, the first question would be, what does reorientation mean to you? And why is it important in changing Nigeria's future?
It's very important because from where we are and where we stand, I think the most important catalyst for change that we need as a people is really from within. It's from what we do within our little circle of influence. And I think that irrespective of what the people in politics are telling us, what the promises they're making, if we don't have that synergy in mindset, we will not get anywhere. We've seen it play out. Essentially, between government and people, you need a connection. You need belief. You need that action, people that want to do and that believe in their country. And that's not what I see around us at the moment. I do believe that for any government that is coming after this, there must be a lot of work regarding orientation of Nigerians, how they think about themselves, most importantly, what they do to further the cause of the country, developmental-wise and behavioral-wise, and certainly how they partake in the civic responsibilities that we all have as citizens. So those are really key issues for us as citizens to bear in mind, and for those that will be leading us to also, help us navigate. Okay,
so you said quite a lot there, and the thing that kept running through my head is, we are the people.
Certainly.
Yeah?
There's no doubt about it.
So we're talking about reorientation of mindsets. How do you do that in today's Nigeria, where everybody's suffering?
It's a lot of hard work, and I think that if we look at it from the prism of the country, our collective, rather than our individual stand, then we'll begin to see the workers have done. You just said it. If we think that we're suffering, if you think that, I can't access the Naira, then, I should jump the queue in that, then we're not going to go anywhere. We must first and foremost display a selfless attitude towards a collective, growth.
How can I be selfless when nobody has given me the tools I need to be?
So, when we speak about national reorientation, people reorientation, I accept that government and leaders have a very important role to play. They must, first and foremost, lead by example. They must show people what it is and how it is to behave, and then people take it from there. But importantly, we also must begin to see ourselves as a part of that collective. I speak to people all the time when they say government is corrupt, government is bad. And you see a civil servant, that has practically sat on the file for weeks and get home and say, there's no light, this government is useless, these people are useless. But in your own little space, you've contributed one way or the other, whether connected or unconnected, to the disarray that we see. I feel that individually from our little areas, from our home particularly, because beyond anything, I tell myself, I mean, we're talking about kids just now. I think that my most important responsibility in life is raising my own children very well, because they then go into the community to impact. So I take that job seriously. And if every other person takes that job teaching their children the right way to behave, the right way to, to love one another, to love the country, do right by each other, then they translate that out. And when all of those, they meet in the public space, we see decorum, we see better behavior. So I think that influence should come from home.
What's the incentive?
The incentive is, the incentive for me is, we'll get the country that we want, that we aspire to. The incentive might not be immediate, but over time we get the behavioral, attitudinal change that we aspire to. It can't happen overnight, and we must recognize that. Part of that is also taking part in the civic responsibilities that are out there for us to do. Election is coming. Are you voting? Are you looking and scrutinizing the candidates effectively to see that they are at least they meet your expectation in terms of what you think and what you want? And then, are you part of those that are selling their votes or voting their conscience? All of those key issues are important. Another important thing I tell people is, how do you participate in your community? What do you do to further the agenda, the development, the growth, the cleanliness, the orderliness of your immediate community? Don't tell me about Federal Republic of Nigeria. Tell me about Etiosa, where you live. Are you participating in that
Etiosa is even too big. Tell me about
your street, your ward, your unit. Are you ensuring that things are done? Because it is from that level that we begin to see change. If you go to established crime, you see successful men and women that don't care about national politics. All they care about is their local politics. They determine based on track record, based on experience and expertise, who goes where, who is the councillor, who are the supervisory councillor that determines whether your streets are clean, who supervises your market nearby. Those are the things that are important to us.
Okay, let me paint a picture for you. I hear you, and it sounds okay in principle. I live on a street where we've struggled to get our dustbin collected because it's owned by one of the royal families in Lagos, and they've tried to increase the cost of rubbish collection. Yeah. So we live in squalor. The collectors are refusing to give us a reduced rate. The people are refusing to pay the increased rates. What is the motivation there for me to actually get involved in helping and making my community better? Why should I even bother when I have local champions who are making life difficult?
I think sometimes in situations like this, common sense must prevail. And, beyond all of our big issues, sometimes you find that the little issues require some level of sacrifice, compromises, and common sense. In that place, the most important thing is your hygiene, your environment. Do you want to live in squalor? Where's the compromise?
I have talked from today till tomorrow. In fact, I've decided to do it by myself, but I'm doing it for myself. What about everybody else?
So, and when you take that action, doing it for myself, you begin to see a sense of selflessness. Do you understand? And that's what we say we don't have anymore as a people. If your neighbor, the next neighbor have the same mentality that you have, we're not going to have that gridlock or deadlock. So we must begin to think of community first rather than self, because if you find out the person putting the signpost or putting the roadblock there is probably thinking of himself, I have to make this margin. And sometimes we need to compromise. We need to think of the environment. We need to think of our collective rather than self. And until we begin to do that as a people, we're not going to get anywhere. No matter how sophisticated or educated or good the leaders are or the people in government are, there must be a synergy between government and people. That's key.
Can you give me some practical steps that every Nigerian, whether you are the richest Nigerian or the poorest Nigerian, can begin to take to aspire to this synergy you talk about?
I think one of that practical step is respect for one another. It's very important. That respect for one another connotes respect for individual, self. Then, of course, individual shades of opinion. What we see around is everybody just wanting to get their opinion and their views ahead of each other. If we respect each other's feelings, we respect each other's thoughts, we respect each other's stand on issues, we can then begin to have conversations that can move us forward. But when we're speaking over each other's head and all of that, that's that. Another thing is also to begin to put expertise, competence, and knowledge beyond nepotism and all of what we have. We've seen that in one of the most impactful public space where people come is government and public service. And until we, as individuals, begin to put the right people, even despite, because there's a difference in between electing the right person, then that person comes in, he has to form a team. Is it forming that team based on competence, based on capability, based on people that he believes, or is it doing it based on nepotism? We will get nowhere. Nigeria started crumbling when we left all of those virtues and values behind. And until we think back and say, wait a minute, this role has got to go to the most qualified person, then we'll begin to get somewhere. And then the expectations of the people on those in positions of authority is also important. I give you an example. When I was in government, of course, it was an high-profile role. I was privileged to be there. But I know what my friends, my family members were throwing at me. Do you understand? When they tell you something that you then begin to look at yourself, am I supposed, maybe I should be able to afford this. And then that puts pressure on you. But ultimately, and when the chips are down, you are going to take out of the Commonwealth to do those things because they're putting, you go here, they say, yeah, this one, you should be able to do this one. There shouldn't be all of that family, peer, and other pressure, society pressure that comes with, undertaking the public service role. So this sort of expectation that we place on public servants should reduce. Let's see them as normal human beings and with beyond the office. Then importantly, I also think that, yes, our developmental state is, of course, very backward. We want to see development as quickly as possible. But given my experience, I've also seen situations where the general public, and I'm not by any means blaming them for this, I'm just saying that we also must be careful what we want from our leaders. The sort of pressure we put on them, it drives them to give us shoddy infrastructures, shoddy services, because all they are looking at, my election is coming in 2 years. This road that should undertake proper design and costing, then you do according, they just rush it because they look at school. Rather than looking at the teaching, the training, the curriculum, they just put up the building because that's what we want to see. Nobody is really asking, okay, beyond this building, what's in there? And it is through community engagement that you can do that. So, for instance, if I see a school in Badore, I don't care, I'll just go to the school. But if I see a school in Etiosa where I live, where my children are going to go into, I should be able to ask, okay, how many teachers do you have in this school? Who is getting involved in those kind of questions? Who is looking at those things? Because if we don't ask those questions, if we don't get into those, when I was small, the PTA used to be very strong. Nobody does that. They just send kids to school anymore. So we must also check, and all those check and balances are important within a small community rather than a large base.
Okay, so the one of the things you talked about was the pressure that we put on politicians, and they give us shoddy infrastructure and all of those things. Is it not their job to have a strategy?
Of course.
that goes beyond them, such that they can implement it and deliver a better service to us than what we will.
It's certainly their responsibility, but like I said, there are community engagement to these things. By all means, if you're seeking for an elective office, you must have a plan, you must have a strategy. Some are short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Do you understand? But what you see them do, because of that feedback loop, is that they focus mainly on the short-term. And the long-term have, its own benefit. What I'm saying is that as a people, we must see those long-term plans. We must allow it to evolve, while of course demanding immediate, action in areas that you think that immediate actions can be, should be at. It's a delicate, balance, but it must be done. And I must be careful here that I'm not by any means saying that politicians should have all the time, or public servants basically should have all the time in there. You must be up and doing, but let us.
There's a balance.
Yes.
No, I hear that. So, what elections are 14 days away? Yeah. What can we, you and I, do to actually give your children, my children, a better future?
It's as simple as choosing the best candidate amongst the lot that is presented to us. We know. So beyond political ideology and all of that, looking at the track record, and sometimes I advise people, we tend to look at the candidate and say, I wish it was Professor Jalingo. Forget all of that right now. Those guys are not on the ballot. The 3 people on the ballot are known to us. Look at their track record, then vote them in based on your belief. Sometimes your candidate might not emerge, and you might think this is the best candidate, but immediately we have a winner that is from a free, fair, and transparent election. Let us get behind our candidate. Let us begin as a people to then, push the envelope of hard work, dignity of labor, all of the selflessness, these sort of virtues that propel a community forward, rather than pulling each other down. And I think that's the best thing we can do for Nigeria going forward. We're in a very, very challenging period of our socio-economic life, and it would take a very pragmatic and a leader that knows how to communicate to the people, how to rouse the people from their slumber to do that. But my hope is that when that leader does that, we are also open to meeting them halfway.
Okay, so let's now separate the leadership from the people. Yeah, we the people, to this thing about reorienting our mindsets. Let's even use a typical day in Lagos. How would you advise somebody to begin to reorient their mindset?
We all have different experiences. Some people take the bus to work, some people drive to work. Some of the biggest challenge if you want to use the typical Lagos is our traffic situation. And that of course impacts on our productivity as a people. What are we doing? Who is jumping the red light? Who is staying behind the red? Who doesn't have a driver's license that is on the road? So those little things are important. Our environment, one of the challenges we have is the environmental degradation and that we see in terms of death and all of that. We can be much more cleaner people. When we come to our homes, they are very nice and clean. And that's really also takes me back to where outside, the public road is trash. We can throw anything on the road. We can do anything. But in our homes, we try to be a bit tidy. Let us take that out. Like I said, also, mutual respect, to each other. Those things are very important, and they go a long way in defining a sane environment from a chaotic situation. And I hope that really we can begin to do that, no matter how challenging and difficult it is. Sometimes you see people doing the wrong things, and you say, "Oh, am I a fool? Who be fool?" You follow, and once you do that, we lose track of any sense of orderliness.
So when you see people doing the wrong thing, do you speak up? Do you keep quiet? Do you risk getting beaten?
I accept that it is challenging, but the right thing to do, of course, is to speak up. But I also understand that.
What if the person doing the wrong thing is somebody in authority?
We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen, and that's really the challenge. And for me, whoever that person is, if I've seen situations where somebody is taking one way and somebody speaks, and the other person that should be giving him support say, will you come up for road now, let him pass. We also must support each other when we know that we're on the right, or somebody is on the right, side of the divide, rather than being nonchalant, careless. It's not my business, I'm going. That is sort of the selflessness and collective approach to moving us forward that we need. Sometimes somebody is slapping somebody or doing the wrong thing, or police, and we just look and it's not my business and we go. When are we going to be our brother's keepers? Particularly when we're on the side of the truth and on the side of the law.
You just said on the side of the law. Is the law really the law?
The law is the law. The law is the law. And I mean, it takes one to be on the bad side of the law to know that the law is really the law. But we accept that where we are now, we've kind of taken laws into our hands. And if we're talking about reorientation, we must, no matter how challenging or difficult it may seem, we must keep happening. That's what reorientation is all about. Sometimes it's difficult, it's challenging, you can't even see the effect, but you must keep talking about it. Keep convincing the next, even out of 100 people, if you're able to convince one person to do the right thing, you've done the job. That person. So we can't say, because, and we give up. We cannot give up about our community. And that is what it is. We can't. We must keep at it. It's a continuous job, but we must do it. And hopefully the next generation coming after us, based on our conscious efforts to nurture them right, show them the right path, can have a better paradigm, shift and thought about how to live as a people.
How long do you think it's going to take for us to get to the point where we can begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, considering where we are today?
It really does depend on a couple of things. The sort of leadership that we have, and then, of course, our desire and belief and, conviction to do these things. It's really easy, in my view, and I say it, Nigerians are very quick to change direction if they have a purposeful engagement with, people that they look up to. It's really easy to do that, but it can take us forever if we remain the way we are without people of good conscience trying to do these little things. But I don't think it's an impossible task.
Okay. I hear you. I'm grateful for this conversation.
My pleasure.
I really am. And it's given a lot of food for thought. I really hope it's going to make a difference.
I believe so. I think my hope is that we do it. If we do it, it certainly will make a difference. If everybody does it, if my friends, if I do it, my wife does it, you do, we will keep making a dent on it. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's a right path for us to take as a people.
Hard road ahead of us, but it's possible.
It is hard work, really hard work. Sometimes it could be discouraging, but you will see the benefit down the line. We all see the benefit down the line.
Thank you so much, Seun.
Thank you.
I really am grateful that you were able to come and talk with me today. I really am.
My pleasure. I'll be glad to be here at any time to talk about issues that can impact.
I will hold you to that. I will hold you to that.
Thank you.
But thank you so much.
My pleasure.
14 days. We're going to choose a leader. Change begins with us. So it's either we begin to reorient ourselves, or we continue as we are and we stop complaining about what we get. John, Helen, and myself will be very quickly rounding off the show. So please, just stay tuned for a few more minutes. Thank you.